Hey everyone, welcome back to Crown Corner. It's your host, Crown, here with another set of amazing and wild stories that you won't believe. From parking wars to pregnancy drama, and even a dash of fast food justice, we've got it all today. So grab your snacks, get comfy, and let's dive into these incredible tales. And remember, life is full of unexpected twists, and we're here to share them all. Let's get started. I used to live in an apartment building that had shops on the main level. The building next door was the same. The two buildings shared a wall. My building had assigned parking and yellow paper notes to put in our car windows. A restaurant opened up in the building next door. Their owner, manager, and staff began parking in my spot as well as our neighbors. I spoke to the owner and she said she would talk to them again but didn't think it would help. They were even parking in her spot. Every night I would get home, call them, and ask that the vehicle be moved. I was getting tired of this when one night they put the manager on because they were busy and didn't have time to deal with my request. He did do it. He told me they wouldn't do it again and I was to stop calling them. I suggested they stop parking in my assigned spot. He told me he had too many staff to control where they parked and he was sure they were not parking in my spot and it was probably a customer. Because customers always park behind a business and then walk around to the front to get in. The next time I worked evening shifts. I got home and this time there was a Range Rover parked in my spot. I dutifully called a tow truck and not the restaurant. I had to wait for a second tow truck because the first one was not equipped to move a vehicle of that type. Something about being jacked up and stuff. They explained it and the wait was because I didn't know enough to be able to answer their questions about the truck, so they could send down the right truck first. They towed it, and I went to bed. A few hours later I was awakened by a phone call from the towing company. I had told the owner, and he was telling me that it was his parking spot and that I had no right to tow him. They were going to bill me for the tow. I told the caller about my landlord's parking permit, the numerous phone calls to have them move, about being told not to bother them anymore and that his restaurant was in the next building with a separate parking lot. We said goodbye and I never heard anything more about it. I also was able to park in my spot after that. I told my neighbor and he told me just to be safe I should tell the owner of the other building and I popped into her shop and told her. She replied with something to the effect of, "You towed the Range Rover?" I said yes. She started to laugh and basically said good for you, and told me it was a restaurant's owner's truck. It still makes me smile when I think about it. It was just another regular day for me and my sister Ellie. She was 8 months pregnant and we decided to have a day out for some shopping and lunch. Ellie's pregnancy had been tough on her, but she was excited and I was there to support her every step of the way. We were at this nice little store browsing through some baby stuff. Ellie was taking her time, carefully selecting things for her soon-to-be-born baby. Due to her pregnancy, she moved a bit slower and needed more space to navigate the aisles. Suddenly, we heard a loud, irritated voice from behind us. "Excuse me, you're blocking the entire aisle with your huge belly." We turned around to see this woman, a typical Karen, complete with a short, entitled attitude and a demanding tone. Ellie, being the gentle soul she is, apologized immediately. "I'm so sorry. Let me move aside," she said, trying to shuffle past. But Karen wasn't having any of it. "No, I am tired of you pregnant women acting like you own the place. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can be inconsiderate and obese," Karen spat out. I was shocked. No one talks to my sister like that. "Hey, that's enough. You can't speak to her that way. She's pregnant, for God's sake," I retorted. Karen turned her scorn towards me. "And who are you? Her bodyguard? Mind your own business." The argument escalated quickly and people started to gather around us watching the scene unfold. I could see Ellie getting more and more uncomfortable, not just from the confrontation but also because of her pregnancy. So I tried to defuse the situation. "Let's just calm down and go our separate ways," I suggested, hoping Karen would back down. But Karen wasn't done yet. She stepped closer to Ellie, pointing her finger right in her face. "You need to learn your place, you obese whale." That was it. I snapped. Without even thinking, I pushed Karen away from Ellie. The push was harder than I intended, and Karen lost her balance, falling backward and hitting her head on a shelf. She was knocked out cold. The store went silent and everyone was staring at us. I immediately checked on Ellie, who was shaking but okay. Then we turned our attention to Karen, who was still lying on the floor, unconscious. We called for help and soon the store manager and security were there, along with a few concerned shoppers. They called for an ambulance and Karen was taken to the hospital. The police arrived shortly after. They took our statements and those of the witnesses. Thankfully, the people there had seen the entire incident and vouched for us, explaining how Karen had provoked and insulted Ellie. In the end, Karen was fine, just a minor concussion, but she was charged with harassment and creating a public disturbance. As for Ellie and me, we were let off with a warning. The rest of the day was a blur. Ellie was still in shock from the incident and I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind. We decided to head home, abandoning our plans for the day. Reflecting on the event, I realized how quickly things can escalate and how important it is to stand up for your loved ones. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, but I don't regret standing up for Ellie. Pregnant women deserve respect and kindness, not insults and harassment. From that day on, Ellie and I often joked about the day she was defended by her bodyguard sister, and it became a story we shared and a reminder of the bond we have and the lengths we go to protect each other. I am currently 21 and have had to live with my very entitled mom my entire life. I have begun to cut contact with her, but she liked to take out her anger on me before I left. Now that burden fell to my sisters. Luckily, they go to college at the end of the summer and my parents are finally getting divorced. So I thought I'd share my stories. So backstory. My first semester of high school, two of my teachers messed up my grades, lowering them by a whole level, but my GPA wasn't all that improved. However, my parents got called in for a meeting with the vice principal. The meeting went well and we cleared up the issue and even got me out of the crazy history teacher's class. She thought God was aliens as if it was fact. Afterward, the vice principal told my parents I might have ADHD. Luckily, my dad took it seriously and after a year of arguing, I got diagnosed with ADHD combined type and prescribed Vyvanse. After that, my grades improved and a lot about myself made sense. My mom, on the other hand, felt it was too much of a burden on her. My mom was so entitled that my entire personality should be shaped around what made her look better. To her, I am not an introvert. I don't love comic books. I don't play video games and D&D. And I don't hate sports. And I especially don't have ADHD. She tried to make me keep it as my little secret, but I didn't. Fast forward to finals week, my junior year, my medication bottle, which had just been refilled the other day, was now empty. I asked my mom to see if it had been misplaced. She unabashedly said she flushed it, as it was too embarrassing for her to have a broken kid. I got pissed and walked out of the house going to school without a word. I texted my dad on a business trip and told him what happened. As I did, my mom texted me saying if I was going to be a little ungrateful jerk, I can stay away. I informed my dad that I had nowhere to go. Being amazing, he actually got me a hotel to stay and study. I tried to focus on finals the entire week, but my grades sucked. When my mom found out, she was pissed. She yelled at me for hours about me being an R-word. I had put up with this for so long that while I usually broke down and admitted it was right because it was easier and I've been broken at this point, I was just done. I went to bed while she kept screaming. She cancelled my phone plan for a whole month. She blamed me for being on the phone and my TV/movie watching. I'm currently a film major, so I didn't mind, but eventually it was too inconvenient for her. Even years after this, she still claims it's all in my head and I shouldn't be trying to take my medicine. This is just one of the many entitled moments, but not the worst, honestly. I might share more stories like the story of my graduation party. This is my first post, so my apologies for anything that isn't up to Reddit standard. But here is one of a few crazy stories I encountered while working at a popular fast food chain 2 years ago. So for clarification, the chain I worked for, I was there for about a year and a half, had a drive-thru. It only had one lane at the time and we had experimented with many ideas on how to speed the whole process and make it easier for the customers. One method was to have an extra lane jerry-rigged with cones that semicircle through the parking lot following the path of the normal drive-thru lane. This worked fairly well but made it tougher on the employees having to dodge impatient soccer moms and carry huge orders back and forth, but all in all, it was doing fine. On a shift I worked, I was placed as a runner. I managed the second lane by taking payment, bringing change, and carrying the order out. Simple. Since we had double the traffic at this point, food was pretty slow. Not terrible, but not great. Anyways, we occasionally got the obnoxious customer. Cheap, impatient, entitled, ratchet, racist. Nothing new, but that day I encountered something incredible. A level 10 customer. Someone who had zero respect for anyone. I started off by asking if his name was X to clarify his order when he pulled up and he just ran over my foot with his 1998 Beater Civic. A certified jerk. Let's call him Richard from now on. I stepped back and asked again. He kinda brushed me off, so I assumed it was the correct order and gave him the total. Like $10 and change, and he gave me a crisp $100 bill. Just to elaborate, when you start working there, you're told to always check with a manager for bills above 50. Now, I have been there for a while and handled lots of cash in past jobs. I could tell a fake from a real one with no issues without the testing marker or the bill checker machine. So right when he handed me the $100 bill, I knew it was fake. Now me being a bored teenager, I wanted to cause some trouble. So as I was walking away, I decided to get his license plate. I walked up to the register window and told him to write it down and call the cops. I also told my manager to check and confiscate the counterfeit bill. This all happened pretty quick, mind you. Richard starts shouting at me not 2 minutes later, calling me names and how he's a busy man and doesn't have time for this crap. I went back over and gave him some crappy excuse in my suck-up customer service voice. Yes sir, my apologies. Give us just a minute. Our kitchen is having trouble keeping up right now. I'll throw in some extra fries for your troubles. That seemed to calm him down for a second. When I got back to the window, my manager said it was indeed a fake and the cops were on their way. All going according to plan. While this was happening, he again started shouting and yelling, demanding my freaking money. I did my best to console him, just trying to buy time. I asked him to pull up and come inside and we will give him discounts for the future. Richard was out of his car at this point screaming and stomping around, but decided it was worth it. So he came into the store again, being loud and stomping around. And that's when he saw the cop cars pull up. The restaurant has a lot of grass, and you can see right through it from most angles. The look on his face was priceless. He turned so quickly and awkwardly walked back to his car. Before he got inside the store, we had motioned the cops toward his car, blocking him in. He was caught with nowhere to run. I was still outside and I could hear him shouting. He was yelling and threatening me and my co-worker. I guess my menacing grin gave it away that it was us that caused this. After dear Richard was in cuffs and stuffed in a cop car, I was pulled inside. I had to speak to the cops and tell them the details of what happened. They asked if I would comply and give a statement in court if they needed it. I mentioned that this guy had multiple warrants and was somewhat dangerous. I of course agreed without hesitation. So yeah, that's the story of how I caught a criminal. I, 31 female, have a half-sister. Ellen, 34 female. Same dad, different moms. No, I'm not the result of an affair. Ellen and I are not close and never have been. We only saw each other at family get-togethers. Ellen has a husband, Tom, 34, and Tom is a nice guy, and when she introduced him to the family, he and my husband hit it off. And my husband ended up hiring Tom to work for him. Tom and Ellen got married and had a baby, and during this time they started having problems. I didn't hear this from Ellen, but from my dad, and from my husband, who was told by Tom. Tom then started staying really late at work, and then progressed to coming over to our house often for drinks with my husband, and by extension, me. He became a regular visitor to our house and began unloading his problems. This went on for about 8 months until one evening Tom was quite tipsy and admitted he developed a crush on me. Understandably, this meant he didn't come back to our house. He had profusely apologized for this, and we're fine now, but obviously, I just prefer some distance. I guess that whole thing was a wake-up call for him because he and Ellen started going to counseling. During the counseling, he told her about what had happened because Ellen called me and screamed at me for the whole situation. She said she and Tom would never be in the same room with me again after what I'd done. She made excuses for not coming to family gatherings I was at for a while before my dad confronted her, and she said she and I had fallen out and weren't speaking. I went along with this because I didn't want to tell my dad the truth either. It has been over a year since then. But this all came to a head over my dad inviting both of us and our families to New Year's Eve and getting mad that Ellen wouldn't come if I was going. He started ranting at me that we needed to grow up and make peace. And if we didn't want to talk to each other, fine, but not being able to be in the same room was nuts. I got sick of being berated and said I agree, but it wasn't me who started it. My dad then demanded to know what the fight was about and wouldn't let up. Eventually, I just told him. He's furious. He called Ellen and yelled at her. He called my husband and yelled at him. He's seething that no one told him and that he has been acting like things are fine with Tom this whole time. Ellen is furious with me for telling Dad, saying that I did this on purpose and have ruined things with Tom after she'd worked so hard to fix them. I feel bad for the results, but I also feel like carrying the burden of this rift that I didn't cause was just unfair on me in the first place. I kept quiet when I didn't have to, but once I was getting heat over it, it just became too much. Am I the jerk for spilling? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, "You're not the jerk." Does Ellen know the full truth or just what Tom told her? Because she's angry at you for existing as you've had no part in anything Tom has done. As she had insecurities with you before, it just seems like such an overreaction towards you for something you had no part in. Another commenter adds, Tom has agency over his relationship with Ellen and how he acts on his unreciprocated feelings toward you. Ellen has agency over her relationship with Tom and how she chooses to process his emotional infidelity. You have no agency in the situation, given that you just happen to exist as yourself and Tom developed one-directional feelings while being estranged from Ellen. Her blaming you for the situation is nothing more than displacement of her own anger at Tom and insecurity in her relationship with him. She has nothing to be mad at you for. Only Tom holds that burden for his emotions and her for whatever part she had to play in their early estrangement. A third commenter goes with, "Not the jerk for spilling, but you're the jerk for allowing him to come over for 8 months while your sister was home with a newborn baby. Do you know how difficult it is in those first few months? Couple that with postpartum and marital issues. None of that is your fault, but I think you guys enabled him and are now focusing on a wrong part of this. It's not really about the crush, but more about the fact that you allowed her husband to escape and drink in your home without so much of a heads up. He feels betrayed. It feels a little weird that you could show compassion to her husband, but not her." Wow, what a roller coaster of stories we had today on Crown Corner. I hope you enjoyed these tales as much as I did. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share your own wild stories in the comments below. Until next time, keep smiling and stay carefree. This is Crown, signing off.